He's a native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and a retired U.S. naval officer with over 20 years of experience. He has done various assignments, including aviation, surface, amphibious warfare, communications, intelligence. It's absolutely no wonder that I was so excited to get a chance to meet this guy and hang out with him for a little while. Welcome to the show, Jack Daly.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
We were talking a little bit before I started recording. I love your book. It's called Laugh Out Loud, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I actually did laugh out loud, and I had to read a couple of these parts to my husband. He got a real big kick out of it, too.
Oh, very good.
Ooh. So tell us a little bit, huh?
That was the intention of the book, was to get people to laugh. Yeah. And it's not a comedy by any means. I'm not even close to being funny. That's why I'm still working and not on the stage.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. It's charming. It's real. It's relatable. And you don't have to be somebody who's a military veteran to actually understand the humor and really get into it. It really is the best medicine.
Well, thank you.
So you are an absolute native. You grew up there in Pennsylvania. You've lived there most of your life other than your military service. Is that right?
Correct. I currently live in Gettysburg, or just outside of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, because I work nearby Gettysburg. But I did spend about 12 years in the DC area. So we just moved up here 2 years ago because my commute was 90 minutes door to door one way. And my wife said that's no quality of life. So we decided to make the move up here.
I agree with her. That's rough. That is really rough. Oh, so I have to ask, with all of the massive amounts of military history out there in that general area between DC and all of Pennsylvania and everything surrounding that, did that kind of guide you to go into the military? Was this a family thing? Was this a personal decision? What happened there?
It was actually a book that was in my parochial school library when I was in third grade. It was a picture book of pretty much a day in the life of a midshipman at the Naval Academy. And for the 5 years that I had access to that book, I think I had it for a total of 4 straight years in my possession. So I was determined that I was going to be a naval officer by whatever means that came about. The Naval Academy was not an option for me because the day before my father and I were scheduled to meet with our one of our state senators for a letter of recommendation, he passed away. So that kind of put a damper on it. Yeah. And then when I was a senior in high school, I was on the rowing team or the crew team. We went down to the Naval Academy to race against the freshmen or the plebe team. And after the race, and they stuffed us full of food till we were about to burst, they showed us a recruiting video that I would not recommend anybody ever use as a recruiting video because it turned us all off right away. So that was another reason not to go to the Naval Academy.
Now, you had to go through a lot of stuff. I know you've got another book coming out before too long called Blind Treason. And that title, oh my gosh, learning what I have about you and your story, that title just it's just a gut punch.
It's made life interesting over the last 27 years.
Yeah, I bet it has. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Sure. The scenario was that I was a naval intelligence officer. I was working at the Office of Naval Intelligence. I was approached by one of the seniors within the organization one day at lunch, and we sat down at the table. My boss was at the table. This gentleman joined us, and first words out of his mouth were, "Well, Jack, where do you want to go? Esquimalt or Halifax?" I had no idea what a Esquimalt was. I knew what Halifax was. I had just come back from Halifax the previous week. So I knew how bitter cold it got up there during the winter months. And my boss was sitting across from me. He goes, Esquimalt, Jack, go to Esquimalt. I said, okay, where in the world is Esquimalt? And they said it was outside of Victoria on Vancouver Island in British Columbia.
It's beautiful out
So
there.
it's gorgeous out there. And I said, well, you know, can I think about this and at least present it to the wife and kids? So went home that evening, presented it. We talked about it. We decided to take the plunge. And before I departed from the headquarters in DC from the Office of Naval Intelligence, I learned that there was a problem out there. And that specific problem was that Russian merchant vessels were interacting and interfering with the transits of our ballistic missile submarines out of the Pacific Northwest, as well as our aircraft carrier battle groups. The real concern was what were they up to in regards to interfering and interacting with our ballistic missile subs as they transited in and out of the Puget Sound area through the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So it became my mission to figure out what they were really up to. Involved in figuring out what they were up to included me getting on board a Canadian helicopter and going up and taking high resolution or now high definition HD photographs of these ships. During our first flight that we had scheduled, we had a couple scheduled because two ships were coming in at the same time, which was highly unusual. We were airborne and we're flying around doing circles of this one ship called the Capitan Man with a K. And I was taking pictures. I was sitting on the door, the side door was open. I was sitting on the deck of the helicopter and taking pictures with a brand new high definition digital camera that we were testing for the Navy. And it was hours later after the flight that my chief petty officer, who I had handpicked to work for me up there because he was the best imagery analyst in the entire U.S. Navy, he walked into my office as I was preparing to go for a trip to Australia for the next 10 days. And he asked me about the flight. And he said, do your eyes, are they bugging you at all? I said, yeah. I said, my right eye's really giving me some fits. I must have gotten some debris or wind shear in my eyes because I had my visor up in order to use the camera. And he said, do you have a headache? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, it feels like somebody buried an ice pick in the back of my head. And he pulled out a piece of paper from behind his back and he put it down on my desk in front of me. And he said, you caught a laser in this shot. And I immediately stopped him and I asked him, do you understand what you're saying? And he says, yes, I do. I said, let me repeat it for you. I said, what you're saying is a Russian spy ship fired on a Canadian helicopter in U.S. airspace with a U.S. naval intelligence officer on board. That's tantamount to an act of war. And he said, exactly what I was thinking. So lo and behold, as the days and weeks went by, we were all medevaced down to San Antonio, Texas to see the best laser eye experts in the world. There was a U.S. Army Medical Research Detachment at Brooks Air Force Base down in San Antonio. I spent about 2 weeks there. The Canadian crew members spent about a week. It was determined that I had caught the laser in both eyes and that the Canadian pilot that I was flying with, Captain Pat Barnes, he had caught it in his right eye. So we had physical evidence. But as we learned after I returned from Victoria, that a search of the ship didn't produce anything, no laser was found, but there were some major inconsistencies in that search and the results of the search, i.e., it was the beginnings of a cover-up.
Yeah.
So as the days and months proceeded, the cover-up became more apparent. Um, the story about the incident was broken by a reporter by the name of Bill Gertz, Gertz, who was working at the time for the Washington Times, and it hit the front page. And before I knew it, my face and my name and the story were all over the world.
Oh,
Uh, not an experience, not a position in my line of work at the time uh, that was going to behoove me in any way, shape,
right.
or form.
This is
Yeah.
a huge pile of bad news that's just getting bigger.
Yes, and as time went by, it got worse and worse. And bad news is not like a fine wine; it doesn't get better over time. So it made life interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Dodging barbs all the time. I was called a traitor. I was called a liar. We were accused of inflicting our own wounds. So it was a pretty unhappy time. Had it not been for Bill Gertz and a law firm here in DC called Judicial Watch, who had Bill Clinton in their crosshairs at the time, and that was who was in the White House at the time. And the direction was coming from at least the higher ups in the U.S. State Department and probably the White House as well, that this incident never happened, make these guys go away. Yeah.
Wow. So you have to live with pretty much daily pain for
Yes.
something that never happened.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't had a pain-free minute in over 27 years.
oh my gosh. Jack, that's insane.
It's made life challenging.
Yeah.
Some days it's more difficult than others, but the way I got through it, and I still do to this day, is that I found that laughter was a remedy for me.
Yeah.
Because as I told one guy, a work partner one day, he says, "Geez, Jack, how do you put up with all this BS that you're going through on a daily basis?" And I said, "Kevin, I have to laugh, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry and I'll just make my eyes worse. So that's, self-defeating."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the impetus, definitely be behind Blind Treason in writing that, which I'm still working on. But the real impetus behind writing Laugh Out Loud was a news report I had heard going to work one morning back in 2019 about the number of suicides that were occurring. Some 498 service members, active duty service members in 2019, 198 family members, spouses, and dependent children. And then the real shocker was the number of veteran suicides, over 6,400 suicides in 1 year
Wow.
in 2019. So it got my attention. And then I started doing some research, and then I asked my wife, I said, I have to be able to do something about this. I can't stop somebody from committing suicide, but if I can provide some kind of a tool that gives them a respite from their demons, because I've had my own demons after what happened with the laser attack and the cover up. She said, "Well, what was your go-to remedy?" And I said, "Laughter." Uh, and I thought about it, and I said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to be a stage comedian. I'm not that funny of a guy. I tell dad jokes, and now I tell the granddad jokes, so it's even worse." Uh, um, so I thought, okay, well, I've talked about writing a book. Let's write a book. And I had been following a daily routine on my own that is called the Miracle Morning, that was written by a young man by the name of Hal Elrod. that really got me through a difficult time back in those in the early 2020s and 2019 timeframe. I was working for a real gaslighter, and
Mm.
it was very difficult to get through it day to day. So that book, Miracle Morning, helped me get through. And I thought, well, maybe I could follow the same kind of a ideal. So I wrote the 5 steps using the letters of the word laugh in order to come up with this daily ritual that is spelled out within Laugh Out Loud. So, you know, L for laugh, A for act, take some kind of action, get some kind of exercise. Uh, U for unplug, put the phones down, put the tablets down, put the iPads down, the Game Boys, and just sit down and listen to the world around you. Take a look outside at the world around you. And then G for grow, learn something you've always wanted to learn, but just never took the time.
Yeah.
Learn a skill, uh, learn about a particular individual, read a book, etc. And then H, humor, humor somebody else, make somebody else laugh, because the greatest return that you can possibly expect is to make somebody else laugh. Then you have given them a gift that they might not normally have. So, in practicing those 5 steps on a regular basis, and they can be done at any time of the day. They don't have to be done at the same time, but practice them routinely, and you're just liable to realize, hey, maybe life ain't so bad. You know, if you're thinking of taking your own life, uh, maybe just picking up Laugh Out Loud and reading through it and practicing it might just give you a respite from your woes. So that was my intent, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's helping somebody somewhere.
I'm pretty sure it is. I, you know, I'm pretty positive it is. I mean, it definitely has helped even me. A
Really?
lot of people
Well,
don't
that's
know
good.
about the struggles that I've had to face. You know,
Uh,
I've never been through combat, but well, in a way, I kind of have. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I've had my own
I read that.
fights. But step 5 about making someone else laugh, that's the greatest part of my day. I absolutely love making my husband laugh. And because of that, I do the stupidest, craziest antics because I'm not afraid of being myself around him.
Hmm.
And it opens me up to being able to make other people laugh now because now I've worked
Right.
up out my material. I know what's going to make somebody else laugh.
Right.
But probably the one that struck me the hardest. I also have something called MCAS, which is a mast cell activation syndrome.
Okay.
Exercise makes it worse.
Oh, really? Hmm.
And when I was reading step 2, you know, you have a caution disclaimer in there that says do what you're able to do and understand your own limitations. I was
Absolutely.
getting so frustrated. I've got this really nice elliptical machine. I've got all this workout gear. I love exercise. I love going for walks. I love doing things. And when I'm in decent shape, I love going for a run. I have several shirts that say otherwise. They literally say, I hate running across the front of them. And I wear them every time I go running because it makes people laugh. I can't do these things anymore. But
Hmm.
that's not a reason to sit down and be disparaging at myself. I've got enough circumstances that are doing that for me. I need to slow down and take a moment and realize that I can do some things and to do the things that I'm able to do. I love that you brought that out in this book. It's so well done.
Well, good. That's very reassuring to me that I was on the right track with step 2. Um, you know, myself included, I can't do the things at age 65 that I used to do.
You look
Uh,
great for 65, by the way, Jack.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Um, I started rowing in high school and did it in college and did it on the club level after school. And I probably missed that more than anything when it comes to any type of athletic efforts.
Yeah.
Um, sitting on that in that shell, especially when I was rowing in a single shell by myself. There was an effect that was happening under the hull of the boat in certain parts of the river, depending upon the wind and current and everything, where it was almost mesmerizing, the sound of the ripple under the hull. And I would find myself kind of getting lost in the moment of that, but I can't do that anymore. So, rowing machines and, walking are probably the best things for me these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a little kid growing up, we had an aluminum canoe, and it was my father and my mother, my brother and myself, just the four of us, and a great big cooler. So we'd take out our lunch and go eat it on the river and everything. It was wonderful.
Great.
And I remember sitting there and hearing the ripples of the water on the bottom of this aluminum canoe. And just like you, I just got lost in it. And as you were describing it, I had to close my eyes for a second because I was transported back to one of those moments. I don't have a ton of pleasant memories from my childhood, but that is a big one for me. And I had forgotten about that. Oh, I love that sound.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, cherish it. Remember it every day. Write yourself a note, little sticky note, put it on a mirror, ripple, water ripples.
yep. Yep. I
Yeah.
love that. Now, Jack, this episode is going to be airing on Veterans Day.
Okay.
I have a Veterans Day
Fantastic.
special every year, and you're it this year.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
I think you can really genuinely help a lot of people with your writing, with your stories, with your humor. I love what it is that you're on a mission to do out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I hope I'm having an impact. I don't necessarily see it as, book sales are not indicative by any means of what kind of impact I may be having. Interacting with folks like yourself who have read the book, I get some very positive feedback from some of the folks that have read it. I had one friend that I grew up with. He said, geez, this should be mandatory reading in every high school.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, yeah, please, start advertising for me.
Yeah.
But
I can see how this would be really helpful. Kids need to remember these things, especially step 4, get off the devices.
right. Yep.
It's so
And
important to understand how those things impact our brains and our social behaviors.
well, here's another phenomenon that is occurring, and it's kind of heartbreaking for me because I had teenage children. My youngest had some real struggles, especially when social media became the fad uh, that it started out as, and as teen suicide.
Yes.
I mean, my first focus was on veteran suicide, but I'm flabbergasted by the number of teen suicides that are occurring across the country.
Right.
And I, kind of banging my head against the wall to figure out what in the heck is driving this. Is it social media? It seems to be that many of the situations that I have read about and heard about are related to some type of a social media link. And it was very interesting that I was talking to a gentleman who runs an organization out in Ohio that help veterans, particularly those who are contemplated suicide, that there is a statistic that they were able to learn that said that 95% of the veterans who suffered PTSD after coming back from Iraq and or Afghanistan had a traumatic scenario in their childhood, whether it was physical abuse from whatever source, or it was some type of traumatizing event, a death in a family, a parent, etc. But 95% that developed PTSD had something happen in their childhood. that was
Predisposed.
essentially, predisposed. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I pray to God that this trend is reversed and reversed quickly, not only for the veterans, but also for our teens.
Yeah.
They're our future.
You know, there was a really weird realization that I came across earlier today. It was being on the internet is very much like being back in high school. You've got the popular girls and guys, those are the influencers. And you've got the outcast, you've got the people that are traveling in small social circles and kind of locked down to only their immediate friends and family. And you've got the people who want desperately to be social butterflies, but can't seem to break through that barrier to go viral, to be one of the popular kids. This is what we have reduced our lives to when we live our lives in social media. We're not living our lives in reality anymore. We are living our lives back in high school. And who wants to be there forever? I certainly don't.
I I'm chuckling because I live in a 55 and better community,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty amazing how those high school days have returned.
Yep.
So
That
I saw.
mentality never really goes away.
I guess it doesn't. I guess it becomes ingrained because I see cliques in this community. I see some of the same parochial nonsense. So I'll leave it at that. I'll get myself in trouble in the community.
Well, Jack, it has come to that point where I have to ask you my last question. But it's always my most favorite question because your answer can change depending on what kind of a day you've had.
Sure.
What is one thing that you truly love about yourself that's not related to your physical appearance?
The fact that I have a sense of humor. The fact that I can make other people laugh, especially my wife. Who, I've pulled pranks on her in the past so I could get a laugh. But the fact that she laughs at my dumb jokes is just it's a godsend for me.
If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. You'll find links there on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight-fisted, but I can say that. I work for myself.